At last, the exciting finale, the conclusion of the speech. So here we go. We're going to begin at the ending. All right, you've seen this slide before, but I can't emphasize it enough. This is all about the conclusion. This is the third in my series: the introduction, the body, and now the conclusion. And why is the conclusion so important? Oh, yes, you remember. It's because it's the last thing everybody hears, and that's what they remember. In the book, they call this the recency effect, the most recent thing that they've heard. I think it sounds a little backwards, but that's the definition in the book. The recency effect. By the way, that's on the test. It's the last thing people hear, the most recent thing they hear, and so it's what they remember. That's why the conclusion is so important. And again, you've seen this slide. Actually, you've seen most of these slides. That's all right. Good review. Uh, and I call this the ending is the beginning, because you really need to know how you're going to end your speech before you start the speech. And I know the temptation is, you're going to wait until the last minute. It just is going to happen. You're not going to think about it. You're just going to go straight into the speech and kind of hope it ends itself somehow. Take just a few minutes, paper and pencil or pen or something, and sketch out how you want to end the speech. Even if you don't write it out, just how do you want to end it? As I say here, this all depends or gives you a way of knowing that you've succeeded in what you've set out to do. Also, you can use the specific purpose to help drive the conclusion. Remember, everything you do in this speech should reinforce that specific purpose, whatever it is that you want people to know at the end of the speech. And of course, a good, strong conclusion really helps people understand that the speech is over. And you might think, well, it's obvious the speech is over. Not really. And every now and then I get students who end a speech with something like, "Well, that's all I've got." Oh, please don't do that. No, no, no. You need to know that you've concluded the speech, and your listeners need to know that you've listened, that you've given them a good, strong finale to your presentation. So let's look and see what I have here. And again, we're going to look at my gold speech, the conclusion of it, and see if I accomplish this. All right. So don't blow it. You're almost done. And again, if you've kind of figured out what you're going to be doing at the end of your speech, you shouldn't have much trouble with this. You're going to review the main points. You're going to reinforce the purpose, that's the specific purpose of what you've done, and provide closure for the speech. All right. So, yeah, they've already forgotten what you said. That's not quite true, but there's some truth to that. They may not remember the specifics. So, as I've said, you need to review the main points. Today, I told you about whatever, gold. All right, but what did I tell you? You'll see when we uh, look at my conclusion, I restate the thesis statement, and I also restate the actual uh, uh, main points, but I change them a little bit. You can just use it exactly as you had it in the introduction, but you need to remind people of how you started the speech in the conclusion. All right, so I just said this. Remind your audience why they were listening to your talk in the first place. In other words, that's the thesis statement. What was important in this speech? Why did you even give this speech? I really am fascinated by the sinking of the Titanic, and that's why I gave the speech today. It can be something as simple as that. All right. Okay, providing closure. Uh, Say something that people can take away with them. And I say, the best speeches that go in full circle. And I've talked about this before. Refer back to how you started the speech. And again, you can do this with the restatement of the thesis, Maybe you open the speech with a little story. Retell the story briefly at the end of the speech. Maybe you used a quote at the beginning of your speech. Reuse the quote. In my self introductory speech, I used a quote from the ancient Roman senator Cicero. A room without books is like a body without a soul. I said that in the introduction, and I used it again at the end of the speech. That helped to bring the speech full circle. It also makes it very clear you put some thought into the construction of the speech. So, however, you might want to go about restating what you did in the introduction, it's very, very important that you do. All right, so what can you use for that? Again, same thing you did at the beginning of the speech. A quotation. I just gave an example of that. Make another dramatic statement, whatever it might be. Uh, Always refer back to the introduction, your thesis statement. Uh, Refer to subsequent events. Maybe refer to some of the things you talked about in the speech itself. Reinforce your connection with the audience. I haven't talked about that too much, but think about this with my gold presentation. With my gold presentation, I I say, the next time you feel the gold ring on your finger or the gold chain around your neck, ah, you know, almost everybody has a piece of jewelry made out of gold. Not everyone, I can't assume everyone, but most people have some bit of gold in their life. Okay, so that's my connection with the audience. That's why I say it that way, because I enjoy thinking about this cosmic connection. You should too. All right. So, anyway, that audience connection. And of course, you always, always say thank you for listening, or however you want to do it. Again, never say that's all I got. Okay. And then hit stop. Don't do that. All right. So, let's look at my conclusion again, see if I did this. Okay. Now, I'm going back to the transition statement uh, from the end of point 3 to get us into the conclusion here. So I said, we now know that gold is an incredible element formed at the heart of supermassive stars, spread through space in cataclysmic explosions that became part of planet Earth. All right, so that was my transition statement. What did I do after that? Okay, I restated my thesis. I didn't write it out here. I should have, as an example, but I actually say the thesis over again. All the gold we wear, all the gold that's ever been mined in Earth was created in a cataclysmic explosion. Okay, so I did do that. And then, well, and here I got kind of uh, a short version of it. Gold is fascinating stuff. We use it for so much, and now we understand its cosmic origins. It's kind of a restatement of the thesis. I believe in the presentation, I did more of a recap of that, but I think you get the idea here. Even if I just use what I have there, where I say restatement of the thesis, gold is fascinating stuff, it's similar enough to the thesis statement that it brings people back to it. All right. And then I reviewed my main points. I say ancient people had no idea where gold originated. There's not much gold. Talk about the alchemists. The story of gold is so much more interesting now that we know its cosmic origins. All right. So there's my restatement or review of the main points. What did those main points actually look like in my introduction? Oh, okay, so this is, you've been listening to a lot of these videos and you're probably thinking, I don't know, I don't remember. All right, so let me show you. This is what I had at the introduction. I'm going to talk about what ancient people thought of gold, how much gold is there, and how we discovered the true cosmic origins of gold. Let's go back and look at how I recapped it. Ancient people had no idea. See what I did here? Okay, so uh, I didn't I didn't restate the three main points exactly as I did in the introduction. I rephrased them a little bit. Once again, you don't have to do it that way. For the restatement of the thesis, you can basically just reuse your thesis statement. And then you can say, today I talked about, and just restate your main points. It it's really critical to do something like this because people, even in a short speech, will forget. I keep going back to the idea that someday you may have to give a talk at work. I mean, that's probably the most likely scenario of when you may find yourself in front of a group of people giving an informative presentation. If you do this, you'll be promoted to vice president of your corporation the next day. Well, maybe not, but I tell you what, if you can follow these basic rules of presentation someday in your work life, it will make a huge difference. People will be very impressed. For one thing, they'll remember what the heck it was you just said. So there we go. That's my restatement. And this, of course, is what I had at the beginning. You can see the similarities, but they're a little bit different. I tried to change it up just a bit, but I still said basically the same thing. And one last time, you can just reuse what you did in the introduction as long as you remind people of what you said for the thesis statement and what your main points were. All right. So, what I wanted people to remember in this speech, this is the final thought. This is what people are going to walk away with from your speech, your presentation. And so, you know, for some reason, I've got all these bullet points here. That's all right. So, today, gold pervades our lives in so many ways. Ancient people worshipped gold as immortal and a gift from the gods, and they weren't so far off. Gold has a cosmic connection that holds us to the universe. It's a gift from the stars. In that final thought, I have encapsulated everything I said in the speech. Everything. I talked about the immortality of gold, the fact that people worshipped it, and the importance of its cosmic connection. So I just used what I had in the speech for my final thought. Basically, I encapsulated it in, what do I have here? 3 short sentences. And then, of course, I say, thank you for listening. All right, so that final thought is really, really important. Don't let it go on too long. I see that a lot, and it tells me when I hear students doing that, where they have a final thought and then they continue on, tells me that they haven't really practiced and they haven't thought about keeping it brief and simple. That's really important. Don't feel like you have to just go on and on explaining it. Keep it very brief, keep it very simple and to the point. And then finally, the references. I've already shown you these several times, but I thought I'd put them back here one last time. These are the references as they appear at the end of my outline. Again, you can go back into Canvas and look at it and see it for yourself. It's right there. Once again, there's a couple of things I want you to remember. You don't have to do MLA formatting. You just use a very simple formatting technique that I've used here. References for All That Glitters by me. All right. This is a magazine, Astronomy Magazine. The date of the magazine and the name of the article. Yeah, here's the one I wrote. But again, Astronomy Magazine. Oh, that's interesting. They were both in November, several years apart. I hadn't noticed that before. Gold from the Stars. All right. And then Marcus Cowan's book. I just have the title. It's kind of a long title. Who published it, and then the date. And you can see here. Once again, I only used one online source, Barron's Financial Report, and I say online source. And the date's really important. Online sources, I'm sure you've done that with other projects you've had to do for school. It's really important to know when the information was published online, because something that was published 10 years ago may not be as up to date as a more recent online publication. I suspect that most of you will only use online sources. I get it. The libraries have been closed. I'm not even sure what the on-campus libraries availability are right now. So I suspect all of you are going to use online sources. Is it okay to go to Wikipedia? Sure. I use Wikipedia as a starting place quite often. And one thing I do when I look at Wikipedia is I go down to the bottom of the article to see the references that are there. If it's a long article and there's only 2 or 3 references, I'm a little worried about that. If there's a whole bunch of references, that makes me a bit more uh, convinced that there's some authority to the article. I will not accept, according to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not an author. It's not a research. It's not any of what you see here. It's just an online source for general information. You need to know where the information came from. Also, do you see any copy and pasted web addresses here? No, not a one. Do not put copy and pasted web addresses at the end of your outline. They do me absolutely no good. I'm not going to go through every speech and type in those web addresses and look for them. No. If you use a web address, or excuse me, if you use an online source, just do something simple like this so I know what it was. All right, so there we go. Introduction, body, and conclusion. So I know most of you will probably be wrapping up your speech here pretty soon. Again, I really hope all this information helps make more sense of, it's not really complicated, but just the organizational aspects of putting a speech together can seem a little daunting at first, but it's pretty straightforward. Again, go to the Canvas files, look at my outline for all that glitters, look at the template for an informative speech that's in the outline, look at the requirements and the rubric for the speech. And that way you're just making sure that that you're hitting all the bases. All of that is in Canvas. You can find it. If you have any problems finding this material, email me and I'll make sure you have it. All right, there you go. So I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing your speeches, and thanks again for all your valuable time and listening to me talk about this fascinating topic. Thanks.